Ahmedabad. This is Air India 171, runway 23, ready for takeoff.
The Boeing 787 was only seconds into the flight when something impossible happened. Both engines began losing power. The pilots were still in the cockpit. The runway was already behind them, and the plane had almost no time left. In the past year, one question has haunted aviation. How could a modern aircraft with 2 pilots and countless safety systems lose everything so fast? But what the investigation revealed was far more disturbing than anyone expected. On June 12, 2025, Air India Flight 171 departed from Ahmedabad, India. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner was heading to London. There were 242 people on board, 230 passengers, and 12 crew members. The aircraft had a full maintenance history. It passed every safety check. Everything was normal. The pilots were Captain Sumit Sabharwal and First Officer Clive Kunder. Sabharwal had over 8,500 flight hours on the 787. Kunder had over 1,100 hours on the 787. Both were qualified on the 787. The morning was clear. The weather was perfect. At 1:27 p.m. local time, the 787 pushed back from the gate. This is where the investigation begins. Not with a bang, but with a routine takeoff that would become a catastrophe. The runway stretched ahead. The engines spooled up to full power. The aircraft began rolling. 62 seconds of acceleration. The pilots called out their numbers. Speed was good. The aircraft rotated at 155 knots. The nose came up. 4 seconds later, the 787 left the ground. Liftoff occurred at 1:38.39 p.m. local time. For 3 seconds, everything went perfectly. The aircraft climbed. The landing gear retracted. The pilots were following their procedures. There was no warning, no alarm, no indication of trouble. Then, at 180 knots airspeed, something changed in the cockpit. There are switches that control fuel flow to the engines. They are called fuel control switches. Both switches moved to cutoff. Not one, both. The first engine lost fuel. 1 second later, the second engine lost fuel. Both engines began spooling down. Both began losing thrust. The aircraft that was supposed to be climbing toward 35,000 feet was now losing power. The cockpit voice recorder captured what happened next.
Why did you cut off fuel? I did not do so. Airspeed, 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 airspeed. Exit.
This moment matters, because the physical design of the switches makes accidental movement highly unlikely, leading investigators to examine human factors alongside complex system failures. The aircraft was still climbing when the power failed. The pilots realized immediately what was happening. Without thrust, an aircraft cannot stay in the air. Without fuel, the engines die. They tried to fix it. The engines began shutting down. But there is a system called the Ram Air Turbine. It is an emergency power source that deploys automatically when the aircraft loses electrical power. The RAT deployed. It gave the pilots a chance. One engine began to recover. The other engine was restarting. For a moment, there was hope. The captain made a mayday call. The air traffic controller heard the call. He asked for the aircraft's call sign. There was no response. 32 seconds had passed since takeoff. Air India 171 crashed into the BJ Medical College Boys Hostel near the airport. The impact was catastrophic. The aircraft broke apart. A fire ignited. Debris scattered across nearby buildings.
It is a terrible, terrible evening for all of India, in fact, all of the world, because this is one of the most terrible air tragedies that has happened, not just here in India, but anywhere across in aviation history. Air India Flight 171 from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick, with 232 passengers and 10 crew members on board, crashed within a minute of takeoff from the Ahmedabad airport at 1:38 this afternoon.
241 people on the aircraft died. The only survivor was a British passenger named Vishwaskumar Ramesh, who was in seat 11A. Investigators from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, arrived within hours. They had to answer one fundamental question. Why did both fuel switches move to cutoff? The cockpit voice recorder was recovered. The flight data recorder was recovered. Both black boxes contained the answers, or at least, the AAIB released a preliminary report on July 12, 2025. The report was 15 pages long. Here is what it confirmed. Both fuel switches moved from run to cutoff, approximately 3 seconds after liftoff. This caused both engines to lose fuel. Both engines began shutting down. Neither switch should have moved. Neither pilot moved it intentionally. The CVR proved this. The pilots asked each other why it happened. Neither had an answer, but the preliminary report did not explain how or why the switches moved. It documented what happened. It did not explain the cause. This created a problem, because investigators had to consider several possibilities. Engineers found that the 787 had experienced electrical problems throughout its service life. Since 2014, when it first entered service, there were repeated circuit breaker trips. There were short circuits. There was overheating. In January 2022, there was a serious fire in the P100 primary power panel. This required a complete replacement of that system, so the aircraft had known electrical issues. But here is the detail that changed the investigation. Flight data showed the Ram Air Turbine deployed exactly 5 seconds after the fuel switches moved to cutoff. The RAT deploys automatically when the aircraft loses primary electrical power. This confirmed the engines dying caused the massive power failure, not the other way around. The physical design of the 787's fuel control switches requires a deliberate lift and pull, making an accidental bump nearly impossible. While early leaks fueled speculation of intentional pilot action, new data analyses suggest cascading electrical faults may have triggered emergency systems before the switches ever moved, leaving investigators divided between a human element and a hidden systemic failure. The AAIB promised a final report. The final investigation could take a year or more to complete. They needed time to examine every possibility. They needed to test equipment. They needed to interview people. They needed to rule out speculation and focus only on facts. Meanwhile, the Indian aviation regulator issued orders. All Air India 787s would receive enhanced inspections. The investigation continues. The final report was expected on June 12, 2026, exactly 1 year after the crash. Investigators from multiple countries were involved. The final answer would come. But until then, the Boeing 787 remains in question. Not grounded, not banned, but questioned. And the question itself is what matters. How could an aircraft so advanced, so regulated, and so carefully designed suffer such a total and catastrophic failure in just 32 seconds? The answer to that question could change aviation forever.